pregnant wife woke up in a Motel Millionaire had given her room to the mistress. Caroline Addison jolted awake in a cramped motel room, her heart pounding, her mind swirling with questions. Why was she here, alone and disoriented? She was 8 months pregnant, for heaven's sake, and had expected to wake up in her comfortable bed at home. Instead, she found herself lying on a thin, scratchy blanket, cheap wallpaper peeling from the walls. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, each ping a haunting reminder that her life was spinning out of control. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, teary-eyed, confused, and resolute. Something terrible had happened overnight, and Caroline was determined to uncover the truth. Caroline Addison's eyes fluttered open. A single flickering bulb illuminated the dingy motel room, casting unflattering shadows on the worn furniture. She could still feel the weight of sleep heavy on her eyelids. For a moment, she thought she must be dreaming. This couldn't be real. She shifted on the creaky mattress, running her hand over her swollen belly. Her unborn daughter, whom she had tentatively named Grace, rolled in response. The movement forced her to confront the reality that she was indeed very awake and very alone. The previous evening was nothing but a haze. Caroline's last clear memory was sitting at her vanity, brushing her long auburn hair. Her husband, Patrick Addison, had been away on a business trip for the past few days. She'd spoken with him on the phone earlier, and he sounded strangely distant. Something in his tone made her uneasy, but she had tried to brush it off. Now, that sense of unease throbbed in her chest like a physical ache. Every muscle in her body stiffened with fear as she struggled to piece together how she ended up in this shabby room. The scratchy motel sheets, stained with suspicious marks, revolted her. She glanced at the nightstand. No purse, no phone, nothing. Panic set in. After several frantic moments, she found her phone on the floor. The screen cracked. A wave of relief washed over her as she noticed it still powered on. 1 bar of battery, 1 bar of signal. Caroline called Patrick's number immediately, straight to voicemail. She remembered him as a charismatic, millionaire, entrepreneur, Patrick Addison, the darling of high-end real estate, known for swooping into old neighborhoods and transforming them into ritzy enclaves. She had married him 3 years ago, seduced by his tender charm and mesmerizing confidence. But somewhere along the line, that charm felt more like a performance, yet she still loved him. She thought about their lavish home, her comfortable bed, and how she should be snug under a comforter embroidered with the Addison monogram, not stranded in a musty motel. Feeling Grace kick again, Caroline rubbed her belly gently. She had to get out of here, find out what had happened. But the day was just beginning, and she was about to learn that her entire life was not what it seemed. Scrambling off the bed, Caroline inspected the motel room for clues. Someone had paid for this space, but who? Her thoughts flashed to the housekeeper, the doorman, or maybe someone from Patrick's entourage. She found a small slip of paper on the dresser, room 6, Westcrest Motel. The faint smell of bleach and cigarette smoke assaulted her senses. The place was as low-end as they came, a far cry from the 5-star hotels she'd grown accustomed to during her marriage. She stumbled to the bathroom, flipping the light switch. A fluorescent glare revealed her reflection in a chipped mirror. Her eyes were puffy from crying, mascara streaking her cheeks. Then she noticed a bruise on her upper arm, just beneath the short sleeve of her rumpled blouse. She prodded it gently, wincing at the pain. Had someone grabbed her? Did she fall? Caroline's heart hammered at the possibilities. She steadied herself against the sink and whispered, "Stay calm." The phone buzzed, capturing her attention. A notification from an unknown number. "Caroline, are you safe?" The text was the only message on her screen besides a flurry of missed calls from her best friend, Stephanie Walters. Stephanie was a no-nonsense accountant who'd been Caroline's confidant for years. She trusted Stephanie more than anyone else in her life, perhaps even more than her husband. Caroline breathed a shaky sigh of relief and typed back, "I'm okay. Don't know how I got here. Need help. Immediately the phone rang. It was Stephanie. Caroline, thank God, Stephanie said, voice trembling. You disappeared last night. Are you hurt? I'm in some rundown motel, Caroline answered. I think I have a bruise, but otherwise I'm okay. What happened? Why was I taken here? Stephanie hesitated on the other end, the silence puncturing Caroline's composure. You need to get out of there, and I'll come get you, Stephanie finally said. There's so much I need to tell you. But first, get to safety. Caroline nodded, though Stephanie couldn't see her. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Please hurry. She ended the call and quickly changed out of the wrinkled blouse into a plain sweater she found stuffed in the small closet. Her hands trembled, dread seeping into her bones. Something about the situation felt orchestrated, as if someone wanted her far away from home. True to her word, Stephanie arrived within the hour, screeching her car to a halt outside the Westcrest Motel. Caroline sprinted out as fast as her pregnant belly allowed. She slid into the passenger seat, tears threatening to spill over. You look awful, Stephanie said, concern etched in every feature. She reached across to hug her friend gently. Let's get you something to eat and a place to rest. Caroline shook her head. No, I need answers. She clenched her fists in her lap, trying to steel herself. I feel like there's a conspiracy against me, Stephanie. Please, just tell me what you know. Stephanie hesitated. Then she shifted the car into gear. Let's go to my apartment. We can talk there. As they drove across town, Caroline watched the familiar buildings slide past her favorite bakery, the local park she frequented on weekend strolls, the hospital where she'd scheduled her prenatal checkups. It all felt suddenly foreign. She remembered how protective Patrick had been about her health and comfort, but now he was unreachable. A knot formed in her stomach, a toxic mixture of fear and betrayal. Stephanie pulled into her driveway and helped Caroline inside. They settled in the living room. Stephanie handed her a glass of water, concern never leaving her face. After making sure Caroline was stable, Stephanie perched on the edge of the coffee table, wringing her hands. Your phone, Stephanie began. Check the local news if you can. Confused, Caroline unlocked her phone. The cracked screen made it difficult to navigate, but she managed to open a news app. A headline immediately caught her eye. Millionaire Patrick Addison spotted with mystery woman at Addison Estate. Caroline almost dropped her phone. Her lungs felt like they were deflating. What? What is this? Stephanie gently squeezed Caroline's hand. That's not the worst part. She took a deep breath, then continued. There are rumors about a scandal, something involving Patrick's empire and another woman, some reports say. Well, they say you've been out of the picture for days, that nobody's seen you at the estate. Caroline's face flushed with anger and humiliation. She had just spoken to Patrick on the phone the previous evening, hadn't she? Or was it the evening before that? Time blurred in her memory. She stared at the news article. A paparazzi shot showed Patrick stepping out of a limousine with a tall, striking brunette. The caption read, Patrick Addison and rumoured mistress Veronica Santos arrive at Addison residence. Her heart pounded painfully. So that was it, Veronica Santos. The name sounded vaguely familiar, perhaps one of Patrick's new clients or associates. Questions raced through her mind. Had Patrick lied about his trip? Was she just a piece in a bigger puzzle of corporate power plays and affairs? Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them back. There had to be a logical explanation. But then, why had she woken up in a motel? Why was Patrick in the arms of another woman? And why wasn't he answering her calls? Caroline clutched her belly protectively. She could sense Grace shifting as though the baby felt her mother's turmoil. The gravity of the betrayal weighed on her like a lead blanket. Caroline, Stephanie began softly, you need to rest. We'll figure it out, but please take care of yourself and the baby first. Caroline swallowed hard. She nodded, though her mind spun with 1,000 questions. Rest would have to wait. She intended to discover the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. Later that afternoon, while Stephanie was out picking up some groceries, Caroline slipped into Stephanie's bedroom to gather her thoughts in solitude. She'd always admired her friend's meticulous organization. Stephanie's books were alphabetized, her files neatly stacked. With the apartment quiet, Caroline decided to check her emails, perhaps glean some clue from her communications. She carefully plugged her phone into a charger and waited for it to power up. Her inbox was flooded, messages from charities, baby product advertisements, and most intriguingly, several emails from a Richard Ramirez she didn't recognize. Each subject line read Urgent Addison Corp Matters. She skimmed one. Subject, Urgent, Addison Corp. Matters from Richard Ramirez, R. Ramirez at Addison Corp. Com. To Caroline Addison. Caroline, I've been trying to contact you for days. You're the only one I trust with this information. The Addison board is meeting soon and Patrick has been making some very questionable moves behind the scenes. Please call me as soon as possible at 550-5012-3467. Richard Ramirez. Caroline's heart raced. She'd never heard Patrick mention a Richard Ramirez, especially someone who apparently worked within Addison Corp. That alone was enough to raise her suspicions. She dialed the number, her hand shaking, straight to voicemail. A second email from Richard was even more urgent. Subject, this is bigger than you know from Richard Ramirez to Caroline Addison. Caroline, if you see this, I beg you to contact me. There are documents proving that Patrick has made transactions that could jeopardize everything: his business, your marriage, and even your safety. I'm not sure who else I can trust. Richard Ramirez. She felt numb. Safety? Jeopardize her safety? Her eyes drifted to the bruise on her arm. Her fingers hovered over the phone. Part of her wanted to call the police. Another part of her wasn't ready to believe Patrick capable of harming her. The mention of your safety chilled her to the bone, though. Coupled with her humiliating discovery that Patrick had been seen publicly with another woman, she was growing more certain something sinister lurked beneath the Addison empire's polished exterior. Stephanie returned a short while later, arms loaded with shopping bags. Caroline confronted her, showing her the emails. Stephanie's expression darkened. Richard Ramirez was your father's friend, Stephanie explained. Remember, your late father, Arthur Green? I think he worked with a Richard Ramirez on some philanthropic projects. Could this be the same person? Caroline tried to recall. Her father, Arthur Green, had been a modest businessman with a heart of gold, always volunteering in the community. He passed away before Caroline married Patrick. She vaguely remembered a Mr. Ramirez. If this was the same man, it might mean he was reaching out not just as a corporate employee, but as someone who cared about her family. I have to find out what's happening. I need to talk to him, Caroline insisted. Stephanie nodded. One step at a time. Let's try calling him again. If he doesn't pick up, we'll go to the Addison building ourselves. Caroline agreed, though her pulse quickened at the thought. She had no idea what she might be walking into, but she resolved to cling to a single goal: uncover the secrets that had landed her in that motel room. The next morning, Caroline woke early, too restless to sleep. Stephanie was still snoring softly in the adjacent room. Caroline packed a few essentials: clothes, toiletries, the prenatal vitamins she always carried. She paused by the mirror, catching sight of her reflection. She was a far cry from the glamorous Caroline Addison who graced charity galas and real estate launch parties, yet she felt more determined than ever. She tiptoed to the living room, phone in hand, and dialed Richard Ramirez again. Voicemail. Frustrated, she searched the internet for Addison Corp's address. It was downtown, in the city's upscale financial district. She decided she wouldn't wait. Within the hour, Caroline found herself standing in front of the imposing Addison Corp skyscraper. The tinted glass windows reflected a distorted version of her pregnant figure, dwarfed by the building's grand entrance. She inhaled deeply and stepped inside. A chic receptionist smiled mechanically from behind a marble desk. "Good morning, welcome to Addison Corp. Do you have an appointment?" Caroline cleared her throat. "I need to see Richard Ramirez." "Name, please?" "Caroline Addison," she said, her voice faltering ever so slightly. The receptionist's eyes widened at the name. She hastily typed into her computer, "I see a note here, Mr. Ramirez is not in the building today." She offered a tense smile. "Would you like to schedule an appointment?" Caroline's frustration flared. "I'm Patrick Addison's wife. Surely you can tell me where to find Mr. Ramirez, or how to reach him." The receptionist's expression flickered with nervousness. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Addison. I'm not permitted to share personal contact details without prior authorization." Before Caroline could protest further, another door opened at the far end of the lobby, and Veronica Santos walked out. She was even more striking in person, tall, with glossy dark hair and a confident stride. She wore an elegant navy suit, the Addison Corp logo pinned on the lapel. Caroline froze, a lump forming in her throat. Veronica spotted her instantly, lips curling into a knowing smile. The color drained from Caroline's face, and for a moment both women stood locked in each other's gaze. Time stretched. Then Veronica glided over, her heels clicking ominously on the polished floor. "Caroline," she said with feigned warmth, "I've been meaning to call you." Something inside Caroline snapped. She clenched her fists. You put me in that motel room, didn't you? Why? Where is Patrick?" "And what on earth is going on here?" Veronica arched an eyebrow, her expression cool and amused. "Patrick is very busy. We've had some important business to deal with, business you wouldn't understand." "You were safer away from the estate." Caroline's eyes widened. "Safer? Safer from what?" Veronica leaned in, voice low. "From things you shouldn't be asking about." Caroline's shock turned into fury. Her voice trembled. "I deserve an explanation," but Veronica merely smirked. "I suggest you go home, Caroline. Stress isn't good for the baby." There was venom in her tone, sending chills through Caroline's spine. The tension in the lobby was palpable. The receptionist stared at them wide-eyed, uncertain of what to do. Caroline bit her lip, fighting back tears. She was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and deeply hurt. There was no help here. She turned on her heel and marched out, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Whatever Addison Corp was hiding, she intended to uncover it, and she would do so without Veronica Santos's interference. Caroline took a taxi to Stephanie's office, a modest accounting firm located a few blocks away. She stormed into Stephanie's cubicle, ignoring the startled glances of her colleagues. "What happened?" Stephanie asked, pulling Caroline aside into a conference room for privacy. Caroline recounted the confrontation with Veronica. Stephanie's eyes blazed with protective anger. She pulled out her laptop. "I've been doing some digging, Caro. Not everything about Addison Corp is squeaky clean. Did you know your husband made a massive donation to a shell charity last month? It's called the Sullivan Fund, no credible records, no official website. And guess who's the signatory for the charity's bank account? Veronica Santos." Caroline's mind reeled. "He's laundering money?" Stephanie sighed. "It looks like it. I can't be sure, but the numbers don't lie. And there's more. Patrick's been removing your name from joint assets. He's forging documents, transferring properties into solely his name or Addison Corp.'s name. I'm sorry, Caro. This looks really bad." Caroline's knees buckled. She clung to a chair for support. Memories flooded her Patrick, insisting she sign this paper or that form, claiming it was for tax purposes or business expansions. She had trusted him implicitly. Now it all felt like a grand betrayal. She thought of her unborn child. What future did Grace have if her father was embroiled in crime? The idea of Patrick orchestrating her isolation, or even doping her to drag her to that motel, sickened her. Could the man she married really be so cruel? Stephanie placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this." she said, her voice resolute. But we need help. We need evidence, and we need someone inside Addison Corp we can trust. Richard Ramirez might be our best bet. Taking a shaky breath, Caroline nodded. She recalled the phone number from the emails. He won't answer my calls. Maybe he's in danger too. We have to find him. Stephanie bit her lip. Let me call an old acquaintance. Remember Dr. Naomi Brooks, the psychologist who volunteers at our local community center? She's also a whiz, with people knows all sorts of connections. Maybe she can help us track Richard down or figure out what's really going on inside Addison Corp. Caroline agreed. She needed all the help she could get. Little did she know, every step she took was being watched by those intent on keeping Addison Corp's darkest secrets hidden. Dr. Naomi Brooks agreed to meet them that very afternoon at the local community center, an unassuming brick building where she ran counseling sessions for low-income families. When Caroline and Stephanie arrived, Naomi greeted them warmly, but with evident concern in her eyes. I heard from Stephanie what you're going through, Naomi said, leading them to a small office. Tell me everything. Caroline poured out her heart, her confusion, her suspicions, the motel incident, the rumored mistress, the shady finances, and Richard Ramirez's cryptic emails. Naomi listened intently, scribbling notes. Richard Ramirez, Naomi mused, tapping her pen on her notepad. I believe he's a private investigator now, not just a corporate consultant. Years ago, he worked with your father, Caroline, investigating financial misconduct in non-profits. It's possible he's gathered evidence against Patrick. Caroline's spirits lifted. If Richard was an investigator, that might explain his frantic messages. But how do we contact him? He's not answering his phone, and Addison Corp claims he's not around. Naomi leaned back in her chair. Let's try another angle. I have a friend in the city records office, Angela Liu. She can sometimes dig up addresses or permit records that are off the public grid. If Richard is in hiding, we might find a lead through property records or something he's filed. Stephanie nodded, clasping Caroline's hand. We need to move fast. That evening, Naomi pulled some strings, and Angela sent over a list of addresses linked to Richard Ramirez. Most were old, but one stood out, a modest townhouse purchased 6 months ago under R. Ramirez Consulting in a quieter neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Without hesitation, Caroline insisted they go. Night fell as the trio Caroline, Stephanie, and Naomi pulled up to a dimly lit street. Houses stood in neat rows, each with small front yards. They found the address in question, a brown brick townhouse with a single porch light flickering. Curtains drawn, no signs of life. Heart pounding, Caroline knocked on the door. No answer. She tried again, louder this time. Finally, footsteps approached. A man with salt and pepper hair and weary eyes answered. He looked at them warily. Yes? Caroline cleared her throat. Are you Richard Ramirez? The man's eyes darted over their faces. He appeared frightened, ready to slam the door, but something in Caroline's expression, a desperate plea, made him hesitate. He exhaled slowly. I am. Caroline Addison, I presume? She nodded, relief swelling in her chest. We need your help. Richard ushered them inside quickly, locking the door behind them. The interior was Spartan, just a worn couch, a few chairs, a table stacked with papers. The walls were plastered with photographs, notes, and maps connected by red string like some detective's board from a crime show. I've been expecting you, Richard said quietly. He motioned to the chaotic evidence board. Patrick Addison, he's in deep. Caroline swallowed, feeling a mix of dread and curiosity. Tell us everything. Richard gestured to a photograph pinned to the board, a grainy shot of Patrick and Veronica exchanging what looked like sealed envelopes. Your husband has been using Addison Corp As a front for money laundering, he funnels illicit funds through shell charities, then recycles them back into the company's development projects. Veronica Santos is his partner in crime, and rumor has it they're lovers too. Caroline felt her mouth go dry. She could barely manage a whisper. But why? Why drag me into this? Why send me to a motel? Richard rubbed his temples, clearly exhausted. You're the rightful beneficiary of half of Addison Corp. Patrick's wife. He's orchestrating a scenario where you appear unstable or complicit so he can remove you from the picture. That ensures no one questions him when he consolidates his assets. I've even heard talk that they're forging medical records, trying to claim you have a history of mental instability. Stephanie stiffened with outrage. Naomi covered her mouth, horrified. Caroline's tears began to flow. She thought of her unborn daughter. Patrick was so excited about the baby. Or so I thought. Richard sighed. Look, I was trying to warn you. Patrick's been tightening the noose around you for months. The motel move. It was a staged disappearance. They hoped you'd quietly vanish, discredited and powerless. Caroline's anger flared. She pressed a hand to her belly. We can't let them get away with this. Agreed, Richard said. But they're dangerous people. They've got powerful connections, politicians, law enforcement. We need a foolproof plan to expose them. That means collecting hard evidence. Caroline glanced at the clutter of papers, photos, and documents. Do you have enough evidence already? Richard grimaced. I have a lot, but not enough for a slam dunk. I need more direct records, signed documents, authentic wire transfers. Patrick's personal files on Addison Corp server might hold the key. We need access to that digital vault. Naomi spoke up. Do you have someone inside Addison Corp who can help? Richard hesitated. I did. An IT technician named Brian Lee. But he was fired last week, under suspicious circumstances. I haven't been able to reach him since. Stephanie folded her arms. Then we do it ourselves. We get inside that server and find what we need. Caroline felt a surge of adrenaline, mixed with fear for her safety and that of her unborn child. Still, there was no turning back. I'll do it. I know enough about how Addison Corp operates to at least get us in the door. Richard nodded, handing Caroline a folder labeled Operation Deep Clean. Inside were photos of Addison Corp, server room, security camera layouts, and a blueprint of the building. Caroline's jaw tightened. She never thought she'd see the day she'd have to break into her own husband's company. But here she was, on the brink of risking everything, her marriage, her reputation, and perhaps her life to unveil the truth. They formed a plan. Richard would wait nearby with a getaway car, while Caroline and Stephanie, posing as accountants conducting an unscheduled audit, would slip into the Addison Corp building after hours. Dr. Naomi Brooks volunteered to stand by with medical assistance in case Caroline's stress triggered complications with her pregnancy. Each of them had a specific role in the mission. The stakes were painfully high. While they prepared for the infiltration, Caroline holed up at Stephanie's place. She spent her days practicing what she'd say if caught, forging the appropriate ID badges and praying her baby would stay safe through the ordeal. Each night, she revisited memories of her marriage, Patrick's laughter, the gentle way he'd touch her belly when she first told him she was pregnant. It was hard to reconcile the man she loved with the monster he'd become. In these solitary moments, the lines blurred between betrayal and heartbreak. Caroline's tears were a mixture of rage and sorrow, yet the ever-present flutter of the baby inside her reminded her of why she had to be strong. Finally, the night arrived. Caroline and Stephanie, dressed in conservative business attire and armed with forged documents, approached the Addison Corp. Skyscraper after most employees had left. The plan hinged on Caroline's insider knowledge. She knew the security guard on the evening shift, a kind older man named Walter Mills, who'd once assisted her when she forgot her ID badge. He respected her as Mr. Addison's wife. If any immediate questions arose, she hoped to leverage that. Sure enough, Walter was at his post. He greeted them with a polite nod. "Good evening, Mrs. Addison." "Working late?" Caroline forced a calm smile. "Yes, Walter, we have some urgent files to review. This is my colleague from the accounting department." Stephanie nodded politely, holding her breath. Walter checked their badges. He hesitated, then shrugged with a tired smile. "Go on up, ma'am. Let me know if you need anything." They slipped past him, hearts thudding. On the 23rd floor, the server room was behind a secure door. Caroline swiped a master keycard Patrick had carelessly left in a desk drawer at home months ago. The lock clicked. They were in. Rows of humming servers lined the walls, blinking lights casting eerie reflections. Stephanie rushed to a terminal while Caroline handed her the USB drive Richard provided. Caroline watched the door, anxiety gnawing at her insides. She could practically hear her pulse in her ears. "This might take a few minutes," Stephanie whispered, typing feverishly. The plan was to download everything from Addison Corp, hidden financial logs to the USB. Richard had set up a remote link so he could help decode it later. The data transfer bar crept along painfully slowly. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered. Caroline's stomach clenched. Footsteps echoed outside. She motioned for Stephanie to hurry. Stephanie nodded, typing faster. In a burst of horror, the door slammed open. Veronica Santos stood there, flanked by two burly security officers, her gaze locked on Caroline. A twisted smile spread across her face. "Well, well, the prodigal wife returns." Caroline's voice trembled with anger. "This is my husband's company." "I have every right," Veronica cut her off with a derisive laugh. "Your husband's company? Oh, Caroline, you're adorable. Soon it won't be yours or Patrick's." The guards advanced. Stephanie yanked the USB from the terminal at the last second. "Run!" she screamed at Caroline. Caroline bolted for the door, but Veronica caught her by the arm. Caroline cried out as her bruised arm flared with pain. She struggled, adrenaline surging, desperate to protect her baby. Stephanie shoved one of the guards aside, clearing a path. In the confusion, Caroline broke free, sprinting down the corridor. Stephanie followed, clutching the USB like a lifeline. They could hear Veronica ordering the guards to pursue them. Alarm bells started ringing throughout the building. They managed to reach the elevator, jamming the close door button repeatedly. The doors slid shut just as the guards lunged forward, missing them by inches. Caroline leaned against the elevator wall, breathing hard, tears stinging her eyes. "We got it," Stephanie panted, holding the USB. "We have what we need." Caroline nodded, her heart heavy. This wasn't over. Once safely on the street, they found Richard waiting in a nondescript sedan. He floored the accelerator as soon as they jumped in. They sped through the city, weaving between lanes, trying to lose any potential tail. Adrenaline still pulsed through Caroline's veins, and her unborn child shifted in agitation. Richard glanced at the USB. "Is that everything?" "I hope so," Stephanie replied, voice shaky. They reconvened with Naomi in an abandoned parking lot. Naomi's relief at seeing them safe quickly turned to concern when she noticed Caroline clutching her stomach, wincing. "I'm fine," Caroline insisted, though her breath came in shallow bursts. Stress was taking a toll on her pregnant body. Richard plugged the USB into his laptop. His eyes widened as file after file appeared. Shell accounts, money transfers, board meeting minutes, forging of Caroline's signature. "This is more than enough to bring Addison Corp down. We can expose Patrick and Veronica." Caroline watched him work, her mind reeling. So many lines had been crossed. She wondered if Patrick had any limits left. A new text notification lit up her phone. It was from an unknown number. "You've gone too far, Caroline. You'll regret this." Point versus Caroline's blood ran cold. Veronica was threatening her directly. She shared the text with the group. Naomi inhaled sharply. Stephanie's face hardened. Richard clicked his tongue. "They're desperate," he said. "It's a good sign we have them cornered, but also means they could be dangerous." Caroline steeled herself. She refused to be cowed. "What's next?" "Next," Richard said, "we leak this to the press and law enforcement simultaneously. Addison Corp won't be able to cover it up if all eyes are on them, but we have to be strategic. If we tip them off before we release everything, they might try to silence us." Fear and determination warred within Caroline. "Then let's do it now. Tonight." Richard hesitated, seeing the fire in her eyes. "All right, tonight." They convened at Naomi's small counseling office, less likely to be under surveillance. Richard set up multiple computers. On one, he began uploading all the incriminating files to a secure, anonymous whistleblower website. On another, he composed an email blast to major media outlets, local and national, so that the moment the files went live, the press would be alerted. Caroline and Stephanie watched, hearts pounding. Naomi paced the room, occasionally pausing to check Caroline's vital signs. The tension was palpable. It felt like they were balancing on a knife's edge. Finally, Richard hit send. They collectively held their breath. Within seconds, the data started uploading. Then he fired off the emails. The digital clock in the corner of the screen read 2:17 a.m. The deed was done. Caroline felt a weight lift from her shoulders, but fear still gnawed at her. What if Patrick tries to twist this? What if the police? Stephanie put an arm around her. "We have truth on our side. The files speak for themselves." Richard nodded. "There's enough evidence here to keep them busy for a long time. Fraud, money laundering, forgery, it's all spelled out. And the charities they scammed? They'll be livid. Public opinion will crush Addison Corp." Naomi exhaled, relief mingled with trepidation. "Let's just hope we make it through the backlash." At 2:23 a.m., Richard's phone lit up with notifications. Online news outlets were picking up the story. Social media was already erupting, with Addison Corp. Trending nationwide. Caroline's heart pounded with both excitement and dread. She closed her eyes, sending a silent prayer for her child's future. It didn't take long for the consequences to unravel. By dawn, journalists were camped outside Addison Corp skyscraper. Police cars lined the street. Employees were seen hustling out of the building in a frenzy. A leaked internal memo from Addison Corp. Leadership urged calm, but the stock price had already begun to plummet. Caroline and Stephanie watched the morning news from Naomi's office. Footage showed Patrick Addison, looking pale and drawn, evading reporters' questions as he rushed to a waiting car. Veronica Santos was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, Caroline's phone rang. Patrick's number, her breath caught. She exchanged a look with Stephanie, who gave an encouraging nod. Caroline answered. "Hello?" A ragged voice at the other end. "Caroline, how could you do this to me?" She swallowed her anger. "Is that your only concern? What about what you did to me, to our baby? You left me in a motel room, Patrick." He exhaled, a bitter sound. "I never wanted you hurt." "That was Veronica's idea, to keep you out of the way. She convinced me it was necessary. My hands were tied." Caroline's grip on the phone tightened. "You're a liar. You forged my signatures, stole from innocent charities, and lied to the world. I trusted you." "Caroline," he choked out, "I'm sorry. I was in too deep." Addison Corp was failing, and Veronica knew a way out. She came from a wealthy network, had all these contacts. She promised to save the company if I did what she said. Caroline felt a surge of sadness for the man she'd loved, but it was overshadowed by disgust. "Save it," she said. "I know everything. Turn yourself in." A pause. Then Patrick whispered, "I still love you. Caroline hung up. It was too late for apologies. She had to think of the baby now. In the following days, multiple arrests were made. Addison Corp. Board members resigned en masse. Veronica Santos vanished, rumored to have fled the country. The media dubbed the scandal the Addison Empire collapse. Caroline found herself hounded by reporters who wanted to portray her either as a clueless victim or a cunning whistleblower. She despised the spotlight, but knew the truth had to be told. Law enforcement arranged a meeting with Caroline, Richard, Stephanie, and Naomi. Investigators needed testimonies and walked them through the process of preparing statements. Caroline bravely recounted her experiences, how she woke up in a motel, how she discovered the betrayal, and how she, with her friend's help, uncovered the evidence. At the end of it all, the lead detective offered a small smile. "You're quite the hero here. Exposing Addison Corp took guts." Caroline let out a shaky breath. "I only did what I had to, for my baby and for the people Patrick hurt." Meanwhile, Patrick was formally charged with conspiracy, money laundering, and other financial crimes. In a final humiliating blow, he was taken into custody live on national television. Caroline watched from Stephanie's couch, tears streaming silently. She felt no triumph, only a profound sorrow that the man she once loved had self-destructed. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Caroline faced numerous legal inquiries, though her lawyers argued successfully that she was a victim of Patrick's deception. Her unborn daughter became her anchor, reminding her of the new life she was fighting for. Richard Ramirez, vindicated by the successful whistleblowing, testified in court. His evidence proved invaluable in ensuring Patrick and several conspirators would be held accountable. Stephanie and Naomi continued to stand by Caroline's side, helping her navigate the media chaos and legal complications. Gradually, life began to stabilize. The tabloids eventually tired of the Addison scandal, moving on to fresher celebrity gossip. Caroline found a modest apartment in a quiet suburb. It wasn't the palatial estate she once called home, but it was a sanctuary of peace. She decorated a small nursery corner with a crib and pastel-colored walls. Every flutter of the baby inside her belly gave her renewed hope. One crisp morning, Caroline received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with scrawled words, "I'm sorry. I will always love you and our child, Patrick." She stared at the note for a long moment before tucking it away, unsure if she'd ever truly forgive him. But for now, she had to move forward. Caroline went into labor on a rainy evening. Stephanie drove her to the hospital, with Naomi in the back seat, coaching her on breathing techniques. It was a tense journey, with thunder growling overhead, but Caroline found solace in the unwavering support around her. Despite the intense contractions and the swirl of emotions about her fractured marriage, Caroline felt a surge of serenity when she held her newborn daughter for the first time. She named her Grace, just as she'd planned all along, Grace's tiny hand wrapped around her mother's finger, symbolizing a new beginning. Within the sterile walls of the hospital, Caroline realized the Addison Empire scandal was now just another part of her story. She was no longer defined by Patrick's name or wealth. She was Grace's mother. She was her own person. In the months that followed, Caroline settled into motherhood. Financially, she had to rebuild from scratch. Most of the Addison assets were frozen pending legal proceedings. But she took a job at a local marketing firm, grateful for the opportunity to stand on her own feet. Stephanie offered to babysit Grace while Caroline worked, and Naomi continued to provide emotional support. Richard Ramirez visited often, always bringing Grace a small gift like a stuffed animal or a flower from his garden. He remained a loyal friend and confidant, helping Caroline navigate the final legal hoops as Addison Corp underwent bankruptcy proceedings. One day, Caroline was surprised by a visit from Angela Liu, the city records clerk who had initially helped locate Richard. Angela offered Caroline a chance to speak at a community event about corporate corruption and whistleblowing. Nervous but wanting to share her story, Caroline agreed. She spent days preparing her speech, bouncing Grace on her lap while typing notes on her laptop. As painful as her experiences were, Caroline believed people deserved to hear the truth, how betrayal could strike even in the glitziest mansions, and how courage could emerge in the face of overwhelming odds. On the day of the event, Caroline stood before a modest crowd gathered in a local high school auditorium. Stephanie, Naomi, and Richard were in the front row, beaming with pride. Grace cooed softly in Naomi's arms. Caroline gripped the podium. A hush fell over the audience as she began to speak. She recounted the story of waking up in a motel, pregnant and alone, of discovering her husband's secret criminal empire, and of the remarkable support that helped her bring the truth to light. She finished with a heartfelt message. No matter how lost you feel, no matter how impossible the situation seems, there's always a path forward. It may be painful and terrifying, but the truth is worth fighting for. Applause erupted. Relief and joy welled in Caroline. She spotted a few tearful faces, realizing how many had connected with her struggle. Afterward, a woman approached with tears in her eyes, clutching Caroline's hand. "Thank you," the woman said. "I was in an abusive marriage once. Hearing your story gave me hope." Caroline's throat tightened with emotion. In that moment, she felt the power of her journey. She wasn't just surviving, she was inspiring others to break free from their own chains. The Addison scandal did not vanish overnight, but in the weeks and months that followed, its fiery intensity gradually subsided. Public attention shifted to the next headline-grabbing crisis, leaving the fallen millionaire and his company's collapse to fade from the forefront. Still, the aftermath lingered in the shadows, affecting everyone involved like a slowly healing wound. Caroline found herself navigating life without the towering presence of the Addison name. Officially, she had separated from Patrick, who faced a list of financial crime charges, including money laundering and fraud. He was held in custody for months before the courts decided that the case warranted a high-profile trial. The promise of a lengthy sentence loomed over him. Despite everything, Caroline sometimes wondered if he regretted his actions or if remorse only set in after he realized he would be held accountable. During this period, Caroline put her focus squarely on raising Grace, who was growing more alert and giggly by the day. Balancing single motherhood with the fallout of a massive corporate scandal wasn't easy. Still, in many ways, Caroline felt more at peace in her modest, two-bedroom apartment than she ever did in the lavish Addison estate. Here, she had no illusions to maintain, no constant pressure to uphold a polished image. She could rock Grace to sleep while wearing pajamas at noon and not worry about paparazzi photos. She relied heavily on the kindness of her dearest friends. Stephanie, still riding a wave of respect earned during the Addison Corp takedown, had gained new clients at her accounting firm. She worked long hours, but always found time to help Caroline with babysitting or moral support. Naomi, on the other hand, remained Caroline's emotional anchor. Whenever Caroline felt the old anxieties creep back, worries about finances, memories of betrayal, Naomi was only a phone call away, ready with comforting words and practical advice. Meanwhile, Richard Ramirez continued in his role as an investigator and advocate for corporate accountability. Freed from the looming threat of retaliation, he immersed himself in new projects, partnering with non-profits and grassroots organizations that championed transparency. Each time he dropped by Caroline's apartment, he arrived with fresh updates on the Addison scandal. He would share tidbits about the ongoing legal battles, sealed court documents, or rumors of former Addison executives scrambling to salvage their reputations. Often, he brought small gifts for Grace: soft blankets, plush toys, or colorful mobiles. It was his subtle way of showing gratitude for Caroline's bravery in exposing the truth. Caroline found solace in watching Grace meet milestones. Her first gummy smile, her attempts at rolling over, her curious gazes at the world. With every soft coo and cheerful laugh, Caroline felt a renewed sense of purpose. There were moments of guilt and sadness, too, knowing Grace would grow up without a father's consistent presence. Yet she believed that a childhood built on honesty and love, even if modest, was worth more than any gilded mansion steeped in deception. Strangely enough, the old Addison estate no longer felt like a home she missed. Reports surfaced that the mansion was under foreclosure and would likely be auctioned off, its grandeur reduced to an ironic symbol of the empire's downfall. Caroline couldn't help feeling a twinge of melancholy when she learned the news. She had once walked those gilded halls, imagining a fairy tale life. In reality, it had been a house of secrets. Though her days were busier and more challenging, Caroline's sense of freedom was palpable. No longer burdened by Patrick's manipulations, she began to map out her own future. She secured a stable job at a local marketing firm, her first real taste of independence in years. She would often come home exhausted, but there was a quiet pride in the knowledge that she was supporting herself and her daughter. As the media furor dwindled, Caroline realized she was finally standing on solid ground. The Addison saga, once her entire world, had become a chapter in her story, an important one, but no longer the sole definition of who she was. Instead, she saw a life ahead filled with countless new possibilities for herself and Grace. In the steady rhythm of ordinary days, making breakfast, enjoying a lullaby, and tucking Grace in at night, Caroline found a sanctuary of normalcy she had never truly known before. For the first time in a long while, the future felt like hers to shape, free from illusions and half-truths. She was determined to stand firm in her new life, forging ahead with faith, courage, and an unbreakable bond with her daughter, who was at the heart of every decision she made. One sunny weekend, Caroline took Grace to the local park. Children played on the swings, parents chatted on benches. She pushed Grace's stroller along a winding path lined with trees, blossoms just beginning to appear. The air smelled of fresh grass and possibility. She paused by a small pond, watching ducks glide across the water. Reflecting on her journey, Caroline felt a gentle acceptance wash over her. The heartbreak, the betrayals, the danger, all of it led her to this moment of quiet peace with her daughter. She felt an unexpected gratitude, a sense that her trials had forged her into a stronger woman. Grace babbled contentedly, her bright eyes taking in the world. Caroline scooped her up, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. She looked at the horizon, the sun dipping low, casting warm hues across the sky. Somewhere Patrick was paying for his crimes. Veronica was in hiding. Addison Corp was but a husk of its former glory. But Caroline Addison was free, forging her own path. She smiled, tears of joy slipping down her cheeks. For the first time in a long time, Caroline felt whole. A new chapter of her life had begun, one defined by love, honesty, and courage. She vowed to teach Grace these values, so that her daughter would grow up knowing she came from resilience, not from secrets. In that tender moment, she closed her eyes, inhaling the scent of new beginnings. And with that, she and Grace strolled onward into a future illuminated by hope. Thank you for joining me on this roller coaster journey filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and, ultimately, redemption. Caroline's story reminds us that life can change in an instant, and when it does, our resilience becomes our greatest weapon. From waking up confused and pregnant in a rundown motel to uncovering a high-stakes conspiracy, Caroline fought tirelessly for the truth and for the safety of her unborn child. Her strength, combined with the unwavering support of loyal friends, exposed a millionaire's corruption and brought an entire empire to its knees. If this story resonated with you, please give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping real-life drama and inspiring tales of courage. Your support means the world to us, so hit that notification bell and stay tuned for our next story that proves hope can blossom even in the darkest of times.